Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. Today, we have a very special guest, writer director Bomani J. Story, whose newest movie, The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster, is coming out to theaters tomorrow, June 9th. Bomani, thank you so much for being our guest today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm feeling good. How are you?
I would be feeling pretty good if I was you too. That this movie is incredible, and I look forward to talking about it. Before we get into it, what was it like premiering your film at South by Southwest?
That was awesome. It was surreal. I'm still kind of living in that moment. You know what I mean? Like I'm still experiencing now because it's kind of one of those things where when you're an aspiring filmmaker, you dream about those kind of moments, and then to actually have it be a reality was nothing that I could have even imagined. So it's still surreal to me.
I had Chad Coleman as our guest as he came back from premiering the film at South by Southwest. And he described the energy and of how amazing it was as well. So let's get into it, man. What made you want to tackle a modern day telling of a Frankenstein story set in an urban environment?
Um, it definitely had to do with my love of the book, of the literature. It When I read it, I was just blown away by her work and her words, and a lot of the themes of it really resonated with me for today. And you mix that with my love of my older sisters who mentored me growing up and were
Hmm.
kind of my first contact with intelligence and things of that nature. And you get this, I call it my, hip hop riff on Frankenstein.
It was great. Now, Leia, who did as an amazing job as Vicaria, uh, were her motivations of being surrounded by death that is given to us right from the beginning of the film, and is that her only motivation for doing what she is doing, is to really bring back her lost loved ones, or is the science element to it a bigger play for her?
I mean, I want to leave that up to interpretation for who's watching it. It's like a big thing for me is always the relationship of the movie between its audience and the film itself and the story itself and how they feel about it. So, and I think that, you'll find your answer within how you're watching it and then how it ends as well, like,
Yeah.
and how the story moves. Like, I think that's a very fascinating question, but I mean, I guess I would ask you, how did you feel about that?
Well, this is how I would answer it. People, this is a kind of movie people are going to need to watch more than once because you've laid in so many nuances, like all the background stuff, the noises, the gunfire going off in the background. You really bring us into that neighborhood, into that setting of what's going on and what life is like living there, being in danger of being shot at any moment in the day. And I saw the movie twice, and I picked up on new stuff the second time around that I didn't originally pick up the first time. Let's talk about Vicaria and her dad, okay? How do you view that relationship between father daughter?
For me, between Vicaria and her dad, I think it's just a loving relationship of two people who know they only have each other. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to try to protect each other and bring each other happiness. And I think they both have their flaws, but at the end of the day, they love one another.
Do you feel like Vicaria is, since they suffered that loss in the family, she's sort of being overlooked by her father? Like her father is sort of drifting away in his coping mechanisms of the loss that they all face, and she feels overlooked?
I think it's a possibility. I think that's something that happens. It's like when you're grieving, sometimes your process is to go within, and obviously, like you can stop talking to people and push them away or whatever it needs to be. And I think that's a possibility for his grieving process.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the grieving process is a very complicated one because at the same time, I believe that he also understands his duty to protect and raise his child.
And
Uh,
And that's shown very well when he is when time comes for him to step up, whether it's at school for his daughter and talking to a teacher or to protect her. He's there. He's not an absent dad. He's there when she needs him the most. One of the characters that I found really fascinating is Kengo, played
Mm,
by Denzel Whitaker. From the onset, for me, I found him as a very likable character.
yeah.
Was that done intentionally, or did it just work out that way?
We're always when I'm working with the actors, all of them, we're always trying to find the humanity in them and what makes them tick and why they're moving the way they move. So, and I always find interesting villains to be ones that you may like. And I don't want to call Kango a villain per se, because just in case for people who haven't watched it, but to me, it's always an intention to try to find the humanity in the characters all the time. Everybody starts as a human, and I build from there.
Yeah, and I also like how you sort of left it up to the audience to fill in the blank history, if any, between Vicaria and Kango. Like, did they go to school together? Uh, how deeply do these two know each other? It was sort of, we were given little tidbits here and there, but the rest is sort of left up to us to decide how well do these two really know each other. We know he knew her brother very well. Now, the racial undertones in this movie run very, very deep. Tell us the message regarding racism that you would like the audience to walk away from.
Um, well, I want to be careful with that, with messaging and things of that nature, because I think people, when they walk away from a movie, they have their own ideas and themes that they take from it, and that's crucial. And I
Yeah.
think that the story of Frankenstein, a large line of it, prejudice was a huge thematic that ran through it,
Mm-hmm.
whether people want to acknowledge it or not. I know the initial take is always going to kind of be uh, man versus God, and man shouldn't play God, but there's also an element of societal prejudice
Mm-hmm.
and how we treat people
Yeah.
before they open their mouth
Yeah.
and
That's very
judge.
true. Very, very true. The interactions between the teacher, those were also very intense. A lot happened in those few minutes where we get to see in that classroom what goes on. Did you have to have long talks with Leia and Beth on how you wanted that scene to be played out? Because it was done so perfectly. The tension between the two, and then later on when the dad is brought in as well. Did you really have to sit him down to explain it, or did they really catch on really quickly?
I mean, yeah, we definitely. I talked to all my actors before, and try to do rehearsals with them before, to really get the scene down and talk about it and find the nugget of truth that we're searching for there. And for Leia, it's like we definitely talked about the scene, and I had her talk to my sisters, which was great, and really to try to dial in. And I had Chad talk to my parents for their situation when they went through that, and Leia as well with my sisters for when she went through that. And so to me, it was just a process of just kind of digging that deep in and really diving in on that. So to me, it's just you always want to have conversations with
Yeah,
your actor, make
yeah.
sure everyone is on the same page and that we're searching for honesty in the scene.
Your style of directing really stands out. You could tell you're a big fan of the quick shot, where you give the audience a quick glimpse, barely enough to see what us to make out what's going on, and then you snap back. Tell us more about your style of directing. And you showed me some unique stuff that I've never seen a director do before. So when you go into a film and you're directing, what are some of the different approaches that you'd like to implement?
Me, I mean, like, I mean, it's my first movie, so it's kind of hard to kind of like dial in on that kind of stuff. And I'm honored that that the film speaks and has a swagger to it. It's like I'm honored that it has that and that it speaks to you. That's really cool, because a lot of my heroes, they have films that have swagger, and they might
Yeah.
not be films that everybody loves, but you can't deny that they have a swagger to them,
Yep.
and that's something that I always love and I cherish and I aspire to, is to make films that have some kind of personality that might rub someone the wrong way, but it's them. It's like it's honest and it is what it is, right?
That is
They,
so cool. In fact, let's explore that a little more. All right. This is your first film directing. How do
mhm,
you have the story, you wrote the story.
yeah.
Now, okay, you need financing, right? You need to get people to back it up. Were there a lot of obstacles to you from finishing the script to going on set for the first day of shooting? Was it a real ordeal for that to happen?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I think with every film, there's always going to be obstacles. I think the biggest one for me was the patience because of how long it took to get the story made. I think I've had it since 2000. I mean, I've had the idea since I came out of high school, but
Wow.
I think I like officially kind of finished the script back in like 2018, or at least a version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, was pushing it around until something snapped in like 2020, and then we started filming literally basically a year ago, in 2022. So I would say it's just more of the biggest challenges and setbacks were just the patience to wait, and understand that it's coming. I think that was probably the biggest hurdle, because you have it and you want to go, but
I,
can't yet.
I'm smiling. I'm excited. You know why? I talk to a lot of filmmakers, and
Mhm.
just knowing that this is your first feature film and how good it was, I see you as like the next rising up and coming it director. You know what I mean? And I've never said that before. You can watch every one of my episodes. I've never said that before. Now, let's keep going on with the movie. Now, I don't want people thinking that this is just a retelling of a Frankenstein story. It's not.
Sure.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not. It goes deeper. It's very unique. You give us your own point of view. What were some of the elements that you incorporated into the story that made it your own? I mean, besides the obvious, the urban environment and all that, what were some of the elements that you really wanted to make your own from the original Frankenstein?
I mean, really, it was a matter of just a couple things, just like my take on the novel. I know a lot of people, when they read it, again, they find the thematic of man versus God, and man shouldn't play God and therefore should be punished for playing God.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just a interpretation or an interpretation, just one way of seeing it. And to me, when I read the novel, I always saw Victor as he was grieving,
Mm-hmm.
and this was his grieving process. This is how he dealt with it. And that was kind of my angle for it. And also just some of the, I guess I don't know if this sounds cliche or not, but then some of the filmmakers that I look up to when I'm adapting this, it's like I understood I was making a horror movie and I love horror. So, but what were the horror movies that I love the most? And those horror movies that I love, my aspirations were always movies like the original Black Christmas
Mm-hmm.
and the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Shining's in everybody's blood, whether they like it or not. So that that's gonna come in, and Alien, the first
Oh
Alien,
yeah.
like those movies were constantly in my repertoire of what I'm thinking about when I was making this movie. Not to mention, of course, like some of my heroes like Aronofsky and Billy Wilder are on my mind as well. So really trying to aspire to capture 2% of what those geniuses could do.
Well, those are great people to look up to. Now, you said
Yeah,
it is a horror movie. It
yeah,
has its share of gore and violence, but it's
yeah.
it's nicely balanced with the story. Whether it came time to direct or when you were writing the story, Did that present a problem? Did you want to maintain a nice balance between the horror part and the storytelling?
I mean, of course, you always want to do that. Like, you always want to tell a great story, and you also want to respect the genre itself. I'm not one of those people who thinks, genre is trashy. Like, I love genre,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to be someone who's just kind of disrespectful to it, right?
Yeah.
It's like I always want to aspire to respect the genre, have fundamentally good characters that really search for their humanity and things of that nature. So it's always going to be a tough balance, and I hope I was able to strike it.
Oh, yeah. There's a fine line between madness and genius. In your view, uh, what makes Vicaria different from Victor Frankenstein?
I mean, honestly, to me, it's like I don't. I mean, outside of the racial dynamics of everything, but to me, I don't see too much of a difference between the two. As I said, I think they're both grieving, and I think they both are trying to restore order or restore their family.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, Victor may not have tried to like taken his mom's dead body who died early in the movie or whatever and tried to do that, but
Mhm.
um I believe that he was grieving his mother's death in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I believe because he suffered so much loss at a young age and stuff like that, he was trying to rectify that, even though it was impossible because they were gone. But I
Mm-hmm.
believe he was trying to rectify that. Like, that's just my viewpoint when I was reading the book. And then once he realized that, spoiler alert if you haven't read the 200-year-old book,
I think we're
once he
allowed.
yeah, right. It's like once he realized that that was now impossible, or he felt hopeless, that was when he went truly mad. Like, to me, when he made the monster, that wasn't when he was mad. He was mad when the monster killed his wife and the last person of his family.
Yeah.
And that's when he went on his Moby Dick-esque Captain Ahab revenge spree, and to the end of the earth to try to kill him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I completely agree. One last question before we go. There's this great line in the film from Vicaria where she says, "Cancer is not a disease; it's a symptom." And the teacher asks, "If that's a symptom, what's a disease?" And she says, "Death."
Mm-hmm.
So right from the onset, we could tell that she views death as something that is curable. It could be preventable, and of course that upsets the biology teacher or whatever, and that causes the big uproar. When you were writing that specific line, what were you aiming for? What were you trying to show us about Vicaria and her mindset?
Yeah, Vicaria. Uh,
Vicaria.
yeah, she, I believe, again, like, this is where, to me, the line "death of a disease," death is a disease. Sorry, that line is, there's two components to it. For one, it's what she's feeling. That's what she's taking from all this, and that's what she wants to accomplish, and that's what she's going to label everything. When it comes to people dying and when it comes to death, it's just like that's the problem. So how do you fix that? And
Yeah.
that's her way to rationalize it. The way for me I capture it is like a through that line, "death is a disease," to also pay homage to my one of my favorite movies, The Fountain. It's a line that he says in that. And so, yeah, to me, that's her mantra. Like, I believe that when someone is going through something emotionally, in order to get themselves through it, you might invent things or whatever it may be before you actually come to terms with the grief that you're facing or whatever you're going through. And her mantra and what she believes and what she's holding on to, because that is the only hope, for
Yeah.
her to be able to restore her family, is that death is a disease. Otherwise, it's just completely hopeless, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
And that's perfectly put. We're out of time. I want to thank you so much. Everybody, you got to check this movie out. It's coming out in theaters tomorrow. It's called The Angry Black Girl and Her Monster. It was written and directed by our guest, Bomani J. Story. this movie is going to take you on a roller coaster ride, and it's a telling of the Frankenstein story, but from a completely different and unique point of view. Bomani, congratulations on the film. This is going to do phenomenal. Thank you so much for being our guest. I want to thank our audience, those
Yeah.
of you who are tuning in live, and the majority of you who will be watching this later on. On behalf of Bomani and myself, stay safe and stay walking. Bye, everybody.
See you later, y'all. June 9th.